Okay, so I wanted to do a quick video on the mailing strategies that can usually increase your response rates. And obviously, increased response rates typically lead to an increased conversion rate. So the first thing that I wanted to stress on was always try to mail on a Monday or a Tuesday when you get started. Um, and that's mainly because you want to ensure that your postcard never arrives on a Monday or a Tuesday. Typically, Mondays and Tuesdays are the times when most people are the busiest in their day jobs, and getting a postcard with an offer is probably the last thing that they want to see. So if you mail on a Monday or a Tuesday, this will ensure that your postcard arrives towards the end of the week when people are usually relaxed, looking forward to the weekend, and are more open to spending money or basically taking action on different types of offers. The second thing is whenever possible, go for an actual postage stamp as opposed to one of those printed stamps that you commonly see on junk mails and most types of business correspondence and bulk mail. Um, and so this is because an actual postage stamp will get more people to look at it, since typically only personal correspondence has one of those postage stamps attached to it. Almost most other mail that you get usually has the printed postage stamp on it. So just another strategy to ensure that people actually look at your postcard. Um, I usually prefer to get my addresses handwritten, and I've seen that handwritten address actually increases response rates as opposed to a printed address, um, because somebody is actually curious to see who's written to them when they actually see a handwritten address on the postcard. So whenever possible, pay extra 20, $30, hire someone of Craigslist, um, or a college student or somebody to basically write the addresses on your postcard. Um, when testing, always start with the most responsive buyer list. I think it's very, very important. Um, Oftentimes people make the mistake of picking a list just because it's got a million people in its universe, and 100,000 people being added every single month. um, you may find that lists like those may not really be the most responsive for your offer, and that's where you really need to have a good discussion with your list broker. um, get him to see your offer, get him to see a postcard, and then based on his experience he can actually recommend the right list for you. When I was starting off on my first project, I was very, very particular about a certain mailing list because it had this huge list of people spending lots and lots of money buying products. Um, but luckily for me, my list broker convinced me to go with a much smaller list, and he insisted that this list would be the perfect one for my offer, since it had like tons of hungry buyers, and I got a 25% response rate, um, and a huge conversion rate from that particular list, which led to immediate profits, and that gave me the confidence to say, hey, I'm just going to go and expand, and start mailing out more and more postcards. Starting with the wrong list can end up with poor results that may discourage you from exploring further. So try to go with the strongest list possible. And the last point I wanted to talk about is something that I call the funnel consistency, which is make sure that you are consistent with every single step in your sales funnel. So, what that means is when you design a postcard that talks about a certain offer and a certain urgency, make sure that you repeat the same message on your squeeze page. Oftentimes, you see postcards talking about one offer and some type of urgency on it, and then you go to the squeeze page and it talks about something totally different. Um, and many times people are put off if the messages really don't synchronize. So ensure that everything that you talk about in a postcard is also there in a squeeze page. Now one of the tricks that's worked well for me is I usually create a squeeze page that looks very similar to my postcard design. So, for example, if I create a postcard with a headline, certain urgency, and a bunch of text and some images, I just take pretty much the same thing, put it on a squeeze page, and just stick in an opt-in box, and that's it. So that way, when somebody looks at a postcard and they come to a squeeze page, it pretty much mirrors everything that they have in the postcard. So it increases their confidence in actually opting into your mailing list. So make sure that all aspects of your funnel are consistent, have the same message, and have similar design patterns.